This is never fun. All right, let's get into it. How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here on the channel. And today's discussion, another day, another Mets loss. This is their fourth loss of the season. Series-wise, they've all been West Coast teams. And another thing, this is the first time all season that the Mets have been swept in a series. Granted, it's a 2-game set, so maybe you don't think it holds as much as, say, a 3 or a 4-game. I understand that, but all I know is that the Mets, again, another game for them where they fell short without Jeff McNeil in the lineup once more, who will be back in the Marlins series. Definitely would have liked him in this one, given the results, because this Mets offense continued to be inconsistent, and the Mets did not have pitching today either, which led Carlos Carrasco to exit today's game with an apparent injury, which was lower back tightness. So, guys, I'll be deep diving my quick reactions, initial thoughts, and breaking down everything that went wrong for the Mets and their loss tonight, again, to the Astros. 5-3 is your final. Then from there, I will be deep diving further your comments, questions, and concerns here in the live show. But for people on replay, make sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. How do you feel after a brutal loss like this for the Mets? Again, just a really not good-looking series for the most part. The Mets did very little that impressed me, if anything, for that matter. The only thing that impressed me in this series, in this 2-game set for the Mets, was honestly some of the relievers that we saw yesterday in Adonis Medina and really eating 3 innings without a problem. And today, Yohan Lopez, 2 guys that are borderline MLB caliber relievers at this point in their careers right now, who have been up and down thus far, yet have been able to eat those innings and really help save the Mets bullpen for their Miami Marlins series that, again, will be starting not tomorrow, but on Friday, because the Mets have an off day. But before I get into anything else, I appreciate everyone first chiming in. Thank you guys all so much for that. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Help us get 100 likes for the first short-term goal, and help us get to 16K subs for the next short-term goal here on the channel. People in the live show as well. I don't know if you guys on replay will see this before it's cut off, but we will have a breaking announcement that you guys will witness live here right as we get to 6 p.m. Eastern time that I'm so excited to share with you all. So stay tuned for that. It'll be posted not just here in the live show, but it'll be posted also on my social media on Twitter. And then later on today, I'll have it on the community tab. But big announcement will be coming. So even though that the Mets lost today, there is still some positivity, some things to be looking forward to here on the channel and overall with things going forward. But guys, I want to know everyone's initial reaction to the Mets loss today. Again, this was definitely not fun for sure. This was a series again for the Mets where, yes, you did not have Jeff McNeil. Was that a factor? Absolutely. Not having McNeil in this series ended up being a huge X factor to benefit the Astros and not benefit the Mets here, as the Mets, again, look so anemic more often than not with their offense. They could not get enough going yesterday with bases loaded. They had back-to-back strikeouts in Escobar and JD. Today, bases loaded, less than 2 outs when they're rallying there that we saw a little over halfway through in this game. And then you see, again, the Mets not able to get the job done. Escobar is an infield pop-up. Dom Smith strikes out swinging. Really frustrated is what I would say to truly summarize this series for the Mets. But all in all, let's get into it, guys. What went wrong for this Mets team? But I think, you know what? Let's start off with the fact of Carlos Carrasco. I think it's important that we talk about his health update. Then from there, we'll be deep diving about this game. Then we'll wrap more things up on the health statuses of Scherzer, DeGrom, and all that fun stuff, because those are positives for sure. But the game started out for the Mets with Carlos Carrasco. Cookie, again, got absolutely shelled. Looked like he got hit off a tee. Looks like the Cookie Carrasco from the 2021 season where he could not get out of the first inning without at least giving up a couple runs. That held true as he gave up 4 earned runs there in the first, thanks to a Michael Brantley RBI double, Bregman 2-run home run, and yes, Yordan Alvarez, the best slugger in baseball, you could rightfully say, 1 of 2 home runs like he would hit today there in the first to give the Astros an early 4-0 lead. And as we fast forward later in this game, before I break down the nitty-gritty about in between innings, I do want to emphasize Carrasco exited today's game that we saw after giving up another home run to Alvarez actually there in the third, and that was after the likes of Alvarez again got another bomb to make it a 5-0 ball game, or at least a 5-1 ball game at that point in the Astros' favor. Cookie exits after he made one throw. He did not look comfortable, looked really frustrated today. But thankfully for Carrasco, and that is the most bogus comment, Eagles, in the chat, so I don't know how much of a dummy you need to be to say something like that. But again, I know we're not all the brightest here. But going back to Carrasco, Cookie exited tonight's game with, yes, lower back tightness. He didn't look good from the jump, and if you follow guys like I do, that'll be breaking down numbers here through Baseball Savant, Cookie Carrasco's velo was down on average 1.3 miles per hour. So the velo was consistently down from the jump in today's game. Granted, was all of his pitches that were thrown to the Astros that ended up being home runs necessarily bad pitches? No, there was one pitch, I believe, that was to Yordan, especially that wasn't even a bad pitch location. But again, Yordan Alvarez is just arguably the best slugger in baseball, you can rightfully say. So the Astros, having some of the best hitters in all in the league, completely teed up Cookie Carrasco. Again, Cookie's been strong for the Mets this year, but he hasn't been as consistent in the month of June. He's pretty much been up, down through his last handful of starts, but he didn't look comfortable from the beginning. Keith Hernandez for GKR for SNY's broadcast emphasized that, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. So that led to his exit. However, the positive at least is that until we find out further information on Cookie either later today or tomorrow, it's a wait and see to see what his health status is going to be. Should he need an IL stint, or is this something where it will just be day to day? Maybe he won't even miss a start, or at most miss a start. Again, it's a wait and see, but I am encouraged, at least for Carrasco's sake, that he was injured and it wasn't anything regarding his mechanics. It wasn't inflammation with his shoulder, his elbow. It was nothing of that nature. It was just lower back tightness that we know to this point in time. So should we find out further information here in the postgame show? By all means, guys, make sure to let me know here in the live chat or in the comments down below. But outside of that, it's just a to be determined on Cookie Carrasco and what his status will be in the days going forward. I'd imagine that he might get imaging done. I'm not too sure. I know that the Mets like to be precautionary, so he probably will once they get back home if they aren't doing it there in Minute Maid Park there at the Astros facility. But yeah, Cookie, again, tough start for him. All things considered with his injury, he still did not have it. 2.1, 4 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 53 pitches. Carrasco's ERA has now jumped to 4.42, but I am confident that as long as he's not out long-term with injury or anything of that nature, which I would be unbelievably surprised at right now, again, knocking on wood because I don't want to jinx anything, I do expect Cookie to bounce back. He has been rock solid for the Mets more often than not this season. Just has had a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde June that we've seen, again, especially at West. Against, we saw the Angels, he got teed up because of Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, the two best hitters in baseball, two best players for that matter. Then against the Astros, he gets teed up by some of the best players in baseball, and Alvarez leaned the way. Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley, the list goes on and on. I mean, this Astros lineup is loaded, and they definitely proved to be the better team between the two in this 2-game set. And I'm excited. I'm pumped up to see how the Mets will do against the Astros next week at Citi Field, because Jeff McGill will be back. James McCann will be back from his injury. Max Scherzer, I don't know if he'll pitch. He might pitch. I actually doubt he'll pitch probably in that series because he's pitching this Sunday more than likely. No less, the Mets are going to be pretty healthy once they face the Astros again. And if there's one thing that I can say to give the benefit of the doubt of the Mets to a certain degree, it's that every series loss for the most part that they've had this year outside of the Mariners series loss, it's been because of the likes and part with having injuries. In the Padres loss, you had both Alonso and Marte out for the final 2 games in that series, right? They got hurt right in the beginning of game 2 there. Then you have the likes of the Angels, again, still without the likes of having Marte fully in that series. You're dealing with some ailments there. And then you see the injuries to the pitching staff. Tyler McGill out for a bit. Now McGill is out again. So all in all, when I'm looking at this Mets team, and even in the Dodgers series, Lindor just hurt his finger, so he wasn't able to play in the first game in that matchup. I mean, there are definitely excuses to be had for the Mets' lack of success and their series losses. However, those excuses can only take you so far when, for the most part, the Mets have had a healthy lineup out there with some bumps and bruises along the way. But even without arguably the best hitter in baseball contact-wise in Jeff McNeil, you need to do better offensively, okay? You cannot let these two pitchers for the Astros, who, again, aren't the worst in baseball, but between Garcia today, who, again, now has a 3.68 ERA, gave up 3 earned runs, were 5 innings. The Mets weren't jumping on him early, which is frustrating, even though that they were able to finally get onto him, as we saw later in this one in the 6th. Also, apologies if my visuals are up and down in the show, guys. I apologize about that one for certain. But not just with Garcia, but yesterday with Urquidy. I always say his name wrong. I do apologize for that. For the Astros, the Mets just need to be better offensively, and they weren't. And that was definitely something to keep in mind going forward. But talking about this game, guys, when we get to the 3rd, the Mets tacked on their first run that we saw. Dom Smith got a leadoff double, Oppo double there in the 3rd, his 1 and only hit of the day, and his first start in what feels like over a month at minimum. Brandon Nimmo with an RBI sac fly, and then of course, that's all the Mets did there in the 3rd. However, in the 6th, the Mets started to rally, and then they fell short. They choked for a second consecutive day when they were trying to get some damage done on the Astros, their starters, and then their bullpen. Brennan Nimmo walks in the 6th. Starling Marte gets himself a nice opposite field RBI double. Just a RBI double there. Yep. And it was great base running awareness by Joey Cora. Joey Cora, the Mets third base coach, realized that, yes, we can get Nimmo all the way home from first after that double. Did that to get the Mets on the board for their second run of the day. Then you see another RBI sac fly there for the Mets, and then Luis Gourmet with an oppo double, Mark Canha with a walk, and then Eduardo Escobar with a pop-out, infield pop-out right to third base. I was really losing my mind at that point because Eddie has had a brutal series and for the most part has had not a good season outside the first month of the year, and Dom Smith strikes out swinging. Then we fast forward to the 8th, folks. Pete Alonso strikes out on what was a ball. I know it was a fairly close pitch there on a full count, but that was frustrating. Out of nowhere, the ump decides that he's going to have a low strike zone on full count. Alonso, I thought that was a good take by him. It was still a clear ball below out of the zone. They called a strikeout on him. Then Gourmet gets himself a nice base knock. Mark Canha reaches on a fielder's choice. However, that was annoying because there was a strike call that was way out of the zone, down and in. Buck comes out to share his displeasure there with the umpire, and then Canha ends up again getting on first because of fielder's choice. And then it ends the inning with Eduardo Escobar striking out on a fastball literally at his chin, way up high, thanks to the former New York Met and Rafael Montero, who was in that setup situation. So just an overall frustrating game, guys. I cannot emphasize that enough. Let me get some water quick, then I'll expand further. And then after, of course, like I said, breaking down further on this game, I'll get to your comments, questions, and concerns. But guys, the Mets in today's game, they had 8 hits. The Astros had 7. Astros had 5 runs to the Mets, 3 runs. Mets had a 275 expected batting average. They got robbed in sometimes, as did the Astros, because early on, even after the first, they were hitting things right, falling short on the warning track to save Cookie from surrendering more than, say, the 5 earned runs that he gave up. But looking at the Mets lineup today, it just wasn't pretty. There weren't a lot of positives to take. Brandon Nimmo, 1 for 3 with a run scored. He's in my top 5, 1 for 4, I should say. Then we also have Starling Marte, 1 for 3 with a run scored, and that RBI in the double. Francisco Lindor had a solid day at the plate. Lindor looked far better at the plate than he did yesterday. I'm happy and proud of Lindor to really get himself his bearings straight after what was, in my opinion, one of his worst games this season there, in which he struck out 3 times and 4 at-bats, going over 4 yesterday in the 8-2 loss. Alonso went over 3, but had that RBI sac fly there in the 6th. Luis Gourmet, one of my favorite players on the Mets right now. This man should be in the All-Star game, not just for his defense now, but for his offense too. He looked beautiful with McNeil being out with injury. Hasn't changed the fact that Gourmet is going to come in and step up. 2 for 4 with a double. Mark Canha 0 for 3. Not a great day at the plate for him, but he did have a walk. Eduardo Escobar did go 1 for 4, but again, Eddie just had an absolutely brutal game. I have a lot to say about Escobar. I really do. Dom Smith 1 for 4 with the double and the run scored. Tomas Nido did not do anything. 0 for 3. JD Davis 0 for 1 with the pinch hit. So talking about the bullpen here briefly, guys, before I really rant a bit more on the lack of offense from the Mets here. Cookie Carrasco, after he exits, Yon Lopez. That's why he's my number 2 star tonight. When you go 2.2, only giving up 1 hit, 1 strikeout, keep the Mets actually in this game where they can get some life later on without it being a complete blowout. Huge tip of the cap to Yon Lopez. That was absolutely massive to see that production from him for the Mets reliever. He has a 4.05 ERA now in the year. And again, these things will get lost when the Mets lose the way that they do, but we really need to appreciate the likes of what we saw from Adonis Medina, going 3+ innings scoreless, and then today, or giving up 1 earned run yesterday at most for Medina, and then Lopez today going 2.2 scoreless. That's great. Then Tommy Hunter, who has been pitching in the bullpen for the Mets, former Mets pitcher from last year, was out with injury, got traded to the Tampa Bay Rays at the trade deadline, and now he's back, signed a deal recently with the Mets, and is up with the team. He looked beautiful. 1.1 scoreless as a reliever today. 1 hit, 2 strikeouts. Joely Rodriguez did hit a batsman on the foot, I believe. I'm forgetting who that was. I don't know if it was Altuve or someone else. However, Joely, 1.1 scoreless, give up no hits, no earned runs, no walks, nothing, and 1 strikeout. Struck out Yordan Alvarez to end the inning there, which was impressive, I must say. And then Edwin Diaz got 1 out to just give him an opportunity there in the 8th because of the fact that the Mets have an off day tomorrow. So this has already been a couple days without Diaz. So I understand why that Buck wanted Edwin in there. But guys, let's talk about the lack of Mets offense in this game, because I'm beyond frustrated about it. I know you are too. And look, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Not having Jeff McNeil definitely hurt the Mets in this series. And it's definitely a positive that we can at least take away from the fact of the Mets not looking as good with their offense. Who knows how they would have performed if they had a healthy Jeff McNeil? The same way, who knows how the Mets would have performed offensively, at least in those blowout losses of the Padres series, if the Mets, again, didn't have Alonso Marte get injured simultaneously in the beginning of game 2 in San Diego. So these are always things that I think about when evaluating why the Mets necessarily weren't performing as well. But regardless, I want to see more from the Mets here. They did not execute enough when they had key opportunities, especially that bases loaded situation when less than 2 outs. Literally only had 1 out there that we saw in the 6th inning, and the Mets could not drive more in outside of already scoring 2 runs in that inning. I definitely would have liked to see more, and at that point, that felt like their kryptonite in tonight's game, just like how it felt when the Mets had bases juiced yesterday, trying to rally back, and they fell short there. Back-to-back strikeouts for Escobar JD. But talking about Eduardo Escobar, guys, I got to say, there are very little positives from him right now. Even just the fact that Eddie somehow, some way has right around 30 RBIs this year is mind-boggling to me. And a lot of those have been RBI sac flies. And again, solid plate approach through the first month of the season. But Escobar has been absolutely brutal now for the majority of the season, really outside of April. April, he was great, an on-base cane. Since then, he has been now 2 months straight, over 2 months or so of just inconsistent baseball. And the reason why we're emphasizing Eddie so much is I'm someone that, again, do believe that he will be able to turn things around. However, at what point are the Mets going to really start to cut the leash with someone like Eddie, who has been a detriment to the Mets, has not been a stud defensively as of late, and is someone that, again, offensively, you're lucky if you can get a base knock or 2 from Eddie, because even that feels like a stretch more often than not this season. It doesn't matter if you're the Astros or the Nationals. Eddie has not had a good plate approach for the vast majority of this season, and nothing has changed. And he looked unbelievably flustered, frustrated in this series, and I was just beyond discouraged to see how he performed in this 2-game set, as I was discouraged with the likes of, JD Davis when he was playing a little bit. Same thing with Lindor yesterday. Lindor looked great today, however, so I'm not complaining there. I mean, even Dom starting today. I mean, he's a guy that, again, it was nice to see him get the double, but just the Mets offense really looked anemic for the most part in this series. And don't get me wrong, the pitching hurt them. When you give up, 5 earned runs and not even 3 innings, naturally it's not going to be that easy to come back from. But still, this team was frustrating. I'm grateful that was a 2-game set. The Mets, you can say that they had jet lag yesterday because they didn't have an off day, heading home to Houston all in a 24-hour span. I understand those excuses, but I still expected the Mets to perform better than what they did in this series, all things considered, and I expect them to be better going forward. But until then, man, oh man, I'm really discouraged by the likes of Eddie. How much longer of a leash is this guy going to get? Honestly, I really don't know. I would assume that not much is going to change with him in the near future, especially with the Mets and their health status as a players. But still, he's definitely one of multiple guys away. Same thing as we get closer to the trade deadline with JD Davis, Dom Smith, and others. The Mets, what killed them in this series, guys? It was home run power. The Astros just dominated the Mets with the home run ball in this series. They hit, upwards of 5 bombs at minimum. Yordan Alvarez single-handedly had 3 of them. And again, Yordan is arguably the best hitter in baseball, best slugger. So it's not like we can compare him to any other hitter when these things happen. But still, it does tell you that, yes, the Mets, while they have lacked the home run ball this year, and it hasn't hurt them offensively for the most part, you can rightfully argue that the Mets are a team as well that can benefit from more slugging in this lineup. I wholeheartedly agree. And I do expect the Mets to address this to a certain level as we get closer to the trade deadline. And that is a hint. I will be coming out with a video later tomorrow that I think you guys will find interesting and hopefully enjoy regarding potential trade fits for the Mets. So you guys already get a little sneak peek on that right now, as I just told you. But I got to say, this Mets team, I expect them to be better. We got to hope that the Braves lose tonight. I know that not that standings mean much right now, but the Braves play the Giants again tonight. Sucks, too, because the Braves lost yesterday. The Mets couldn't gain any ground. And if the Braves lose tonight, in a best-case scenario, the Mets don't gain any ground again. So this was a series not fun to watch at all. I expect and truly hope the Mets will be better at home against the Astros when they match up for the second and final time this season next week. But with that being said, guys, now let's pivot to the health statuses, right? We talked about Carrasco. It's a wait and see on him. I'm not completely discouraged with Carrasco. It doesn't look like it will be anything too serious. However, we don't know anything truly at this point in time. So once we get further information, we will discuss it further over the next day or so. But then when we look at the likes of Max Scherzer, again, we talked about him pitch perfectly fine with the Rumble Ponies in Double-A. He's set. He wants to return, and we can fully expect, for the most part, Scherzer to be back on the bump for the Mets this Sunday in the series finale in Miami against those Marlins. Jeff McNeil, James McCann, and Seth Lugo. 2 of them have been out with injury, and 1 of them has been out because he just had a baby, that being a Lugo, are all set to return in the Miami Marlins series. So that is crucial for this Mets team. I'm honestly excited to see McCann because, look, the Mets have been so anemic for the most part with the catching position that literally if we can just get McCann to have a couple base knocks here or there, that'll literally make my my week because of just I literally expect nothing from the Mets at the catching position. So literally, who knows? Maybe McCann will be somewhat of a bright spot. Not going to get my hopes up, but I am looking forward to his return to get Mazika back down to AAA because he's just not an MLB caliber catcher, but we know that story. And then the big thing as well, guys, in case you didn't see, is Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom, as we discussed yesterday, pitched his first sim game, his first time he faced live batters, right? Since being put on the IL right before the season. He will pitch one more sim game, facing live batters, if you will, this weekend. And then as long as there is no setbacks there, he will begin his rehab start 5 days after that or so, right? As long as he's on a 5-day schedule. So Jacob deGrom, one more opportunity in Port St. Lucie against live batters this weekend. Then from there, he will start one of multiple rehab starts. And as long as there's no setbacks, once those rehab starts are done, he will return to the Mets rotation. So everything to this point is really looking like deGrom will either return just before or just after the All-Star break. So around a month away for Jake. But again, I'm happy. Everything is encouraging on his front. And same thing with every player for the most part in their health status is that it wasn't hurt today, at least. Even for the sake of that being in Cookie Carrasco, I'm glad that at least Cookie's injury, again, once more was not regarding his arm, wasn't his shoulder or anything of his throwing mechanics or even his hamstring. So that's definitely a positive. Truly the only positives from this entire series, folks, was the fact that the Mets are getting their players back. Outside of that, there was literally none. I want to see the Mets go toe-to-toe and be better against some of the better teams in baseball that are on the same wavelength as them record-wise or at least close to. We've seen them thrive and we've seen them struggle. And it has been, I will say, a little hard to evaluate with those struggles, knowing that, again, they have been without a key player in almost all those series as led to those series losses. But again, that only means so much because you have the Astros without their young stud of a shortstop in Jeremy Pena this series because he was out with injury. So if we're looking at things, I can't act like a hypocrite and say, oh, things, with McNeil, I give them that's the complete benefit of the doubt for no offense when the Astros had their young stud and Jeremy Pena out on the IL. And look at what the Astros did. They just completely dominated the Mets early on and often in this series. So Astros were the better team. Hopefully the Mets will be the better team in round 2 next week. But with that being said, folks, that is going to wrap up things for people here on replay. So guys, let me know your thoughts. Actually, you know what? We're going to hold off on that. I'm going to actually wait a couple more minutes before I cut things off for people on replay because I do have a big announcement that I'm going to be sharing with you guys right now. But before I do, if there are any donations in the chat, which I do believe I saw at least one, I'm going to address them quickly. Once more, guys, if you're enjoying the post-game coverage, I appreciate you very much, especially after another rough Mets loss. Let me know your thoughts and comments below and continue smashing that like and subscribe button. It's always greatly appreciated, folks. I did see a dono right in the beginning of the chat, so let me get to that if I didn't address it right. Mike, thank you so much for the dono. My apologies for the visuals once more, guys. My computer's been running hot. I have been working nonstop lately, and you'll understand why here in literally a minute. But Mike, appreciate that donation. Another travel swing series loss surprise. I know. I'm assuming that the surprise part is sarcasm, right? The Mets out west has not been fun. The Mets against AL teams for the few times that they've done that so far this year has not been fun either. So definitely needs to be better. I expect them to be better, but man, oh man, it's frustrating because especially with the fact that the Mets really haven't even been fully healthy in any of this series that they've lost to these better teams out west, either the NL or the AL. It just frustrates me because it affects my evaluation to a certain extent, regardless of the fact that they still need to be better, and I'm aware of that. But all right, folks, it is that time. I'm going to post it right now on Twitter, and then we're going to go from there. And yeah, here we go, folks. Give me 1 second. 1 second, then I'll tell you guys what's up. This series is a wake-up call, if anything. I agree. It is a wake-up call to a certain extent. Okay, folks, here we go. Breaking news. Drum roll, please. I'm really excited to get into this with you guys. And that is the announcement that I am officially starting a New York Mets podcast, weekly podcast with Joe Serralo, who you guys saw on the channel a couple weeks ago for a series preview, who is a is a host of a national podcast that he has as his own Joe Sorello podcast, sports podcast for the Believe Network. And we together are pairing up to be doing a weekly Mets podcast that starts tomorrow. So it'll be on the YouTube channel, along with also seeing out wherever you get your podcast. We'll be uploading 1 to 2 times at minimum a week, hopefully after every series, or at least after most series, especially. But yes, what the exciting thing about this series, guys, this new podcast that we're doing with Believe, is that one, you can check us out now, not just on the YouTube channel, but wherever you get your podcast, weekly, breaking down further, sharing our analysis on recaps, reactions, series previews, post-game, all that kind of different stuff. We're going to be doing plenty of exclusive player interviews, which is exciting too. And the biggest thing, drum roll please, not just the fact that it's another Mets podcast now in the space, but after a couple episodes, our third and final co-host is in fact going to be, yes, a former New York Met. Can't tell you who that is right now, but don't get me wrong. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so pumped up to get this announced for you guys. Again, the first pod will be out tomorrow, probably around 6 a.m. Eastern time, wherever you get your podcast. But then the video format will probably be on the channel around, I'd say, 1 p.m. Eastern time, as long as there's no setbacks or anything of that nature. So weekly pod for Believe, that being in the Believe in Queens Mets podcast, myself, Joe, and soon to be a former New York Met as well. We're going to be all tag teaming to share our analysis for series previews, series, recaps. And again, just really breaking down the nitty gritty about the Mets. I am a Mets content creator. Joe is a former D1 pitcher and, again, a national podcast host for Believe and for his own sports podcast. And then we're going to have a former Met. So you're going to hear all of our different perspectives. A guy like myself that doesn't have the baseball background, but surely has the fandom and the interest. And then you have Joe, who does have the baseball background as a former D1 pitcher, but also, again, has a different type of viewpoint, a little bit different than mine. And then we're going to have a former player that is going to have a completely different viewpoint than us in a lot of things. So we're not going to agree on everything. It's going to lead to some hot debates and a lot of great discussions. And again, this is the new announcement. So guys, please make sure to check it out wherever you get your podcast. First pod will, in fact, be dropping tomorrow. However, if you want to see a little teaser clip that I posted on my Twitter, by all means, you can do that. But yes, Mets podcast, Believe in Queens. Hope you guys are excited. I know I am. An official Mets podcast from, yes, the Believe Network. So that was the announcement. I hope you guys are pumped up for it. I know that I am. And I'm just excited to get out there in the podcast game now, guys. So that way we aren't going to just be YouTube content, but that way, if you want to listen to me, but maybe you can't catch a video or something, now don't worry. Whenever you either on your work trip, weekly, going to work into the city, or the likes of just wanting to listen when you're on downtime and don't necessarily want to watch a video format, you don't have to now, because the podcast will be available again everywhere that you get your podcast. So appreciate Believe so much for reaching out to me, the network. I'm so excited to work with them. They do a phenomenal job, guys. In case you don't know, they are currently paired with they're doing podcasts for every MLB team right now. They're going to have a former player with every single other co-host for the different ones. Robbie Hyde, for example, a great friend of the channel, a great YouTuber, one of the better baseball YouTubers out there. He has his own Red Sox podcast for the Believe Network. And then outside that, they do the NFL, in which they have all former players, and they even are on Bally Sports Television for a weekly show for their podcast. That is with, yes, Pac-Man Jones, if you know him. They also are signed with Sirius XM and are getting a bunch of other shows on, yes, the radio. And just a lot of exciting stuff is going to come from this, guys. There's a potential that we could be on the radio in the future, along with some networking opportunities there on television, along with, again, interviewing and being a part of and really interacting and intertwining with former players and current players left and right. So a lot of exclusive access is going to be an absolute blast. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, just want to put you guys on. Why wasn't the podcast You Gotta Believe? The reason why we didn't want to label it You Gotta Believe is simple as I love my guys at the We Gotta Believe podcast for Barstool. And I felt it was too similar if we said You Gotta Believe when they're We Gotta Believe. We have Believe in the name, but it's solely because of the fact that the podcast network is Believe. That is their name itself, BLEAV. So that it really isn't, it just went in hand that the Mets are known for You Gotta Believe. But again, that really was the only reason at the end of the day why it was intertwined in the name. So Believe in Queens, your newest Mets podcast. Check it out wherever you get your pods. First episode coming out bright and early tomorrow. Appreciate everyone again for the support. You guys have been amazing. If it wasn't for you, this type of opportunity does not become possible. Mike, how's it going? Let's see. Yay, more good Mets content on Spotify. Congrats and keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that. Hype in the chat to you. Let's get some more love and hype in the chat for Mr. Mike. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for the $10 donation. And one more thing that I do want to add on, guys, regarding the podcast is the fact that, yes, first episode will be pre-recorded, but there will be episodes where it will be live streams. And even when we have the former Met, even when we have exclusive interviews, not all of them will be pre-recorded. We will have live stream interactions for the pods as well. So there will be times for you guys to ask questions to even current and or former Mets players. So just keeping that aware for you all. This is not something where it's going to be solely pre-recorded content. There will be some episodes for sure here and there, depending on the day and our schedules, that will warrant if we can go live for it or if we have to pre-record. So again, just going to open up the floodgates. A lot of opportunities are coming from this. We're really excited to try to give you the best Mets coverage on a weekly basis, rounding all things New York Mets wise that you can have to offer from myself, Joe, and a soon-to-be former New York Met as our third and final co-host. But now let's get this out of here, guys. I appreciate everyone with the kind words regarding the announcement. And now let's cut things off for people on replay. So for people in the live show, which is not you guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And yes, the podcast will be on my channel. Yes, every single episode, video-wise, will be on WardyNYM. And then audio-wise, it will be wherever you get your podcasts. Yes, that is in fact true. But now I'm going to cut things off for people on replay. So people in the live show, continue to let me know your thoughts about the Mets right now and going forward. Let me know how you're feeling about this series loss and also how you're feeling about the announcement that, yes, we have a new Mets pod in the space. And of course, guys, people on replay, let me know your thoughts down below. Greatly appreciate. My apologies. I know that this post-game show was a little wacky. Been working nonstop today. I'm going to be recording the pod right after this live show that you guys will have out tomorrow, and more content is coming beyond that. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. I hope you guys are excited. I know I am. But for people in the replay, this is where we're going to cut things off. People in the live show, now we're going to start answering all your comments, questions, and concerns.